Hey,
Hello,
good
hello.
evening to you.
That it is.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Man, I feel like I hadn't seen you in like an hour.
Something like that.
Man, I'll tell you what, yeah, I'm your work wife, that old adage. Well, we have a new gold medalist in being first into class tonight. Chad is first in the room on the YouTube. So congratulations, Chad. You're the gold medal winner tonight. Viviana, how's it feel to be bronze? Hmm? So ho ho. So
Tanya's got silver.
anyway, well, I just watched a gorgeous sunset out
Yeah, I
my
saw
window.
when I was going to pick up Harley. It looked like
It
it had a little orange tinge to it.
yeah.
That is one thing about Texas being, at least that part being so flat. I mean, you get some great sunsets
Oh
here.
man. I can't remember, it was recently, which with me could be 5 years ago.
Right.
But recently I was driving home and when you're going the interstate out to Caddo, you get a nice long kind of uninterrupted horizon, and it was just stunning. I mean, it really, really was. It was dark, and it was, just it. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, man, I'm looking at this,
Hmm.
and and I thought of that old adage, that old illustration. Two men were standing watching a sunset, and one man looked so intently at it, the other man said, "Well, surely you must be an artist." He says, "No, I was blind for most of my life." And he sees it so in a
That would be
special way.
that'd be a crazy experience for sure. I mean, we get that. A lot of us have had, well, not me personally, but a lot of us have had that spiritually. That
Yeah.
spiritual experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy about it. For me, I have to kind of, and I guess it's just a personal problem. But as soon as I see something like that, my first inclination is take a photo. And there's nothing wrong with taking photos and all those
Mm-hmm.
kind of things. I mean, it's great and people enjoy it. And then I was like, it's like let's just enjoy it. I don't know why my first urge is to take a photo, almost like capture it, or
Right.
something.
Well, we think if we capture it, we can enjoy it beyond the moment, but we really rarely do.
Yeah.
And yeah, we kind of lose that moment of being lost in the moment. So yeah, I get it. So,
I was listening to some
buddy,
people that said it's this podcast I listened to, and they said that possessions don't have any inherent meaning; they just have the meaning that we give them. But experiences are inherently meaningful, and so
ooh
if you
man,
yeah.
that's stout right there.
Yeah, I mean, if they're like minimalist people, so obviously they've got their
Ooh,
thing. But it's I think it's true. If you look back on your life and you're going to tell stories about your life, and I've listened to you have some great stories about things that you've done and mission trips you've been on, those kind of things. It's experiences. Very rarely is it this thing I own. Almost never. And if it is, it's because somebody meaningful to you gave it to you most of the time, and it has sentimental value or something.
right. Well, it's interesting. I was visiting with someone recently, and um, one of the discussions in life is, we all will accumulate things, right? And some of them have, like you say, the ones that stay with us have value to us.
Right.
And the ones that have real value to us are those are the ones we want other people to have when you know
Right.
and we were having a discussion about I a wonderful godly woman that I knew. She's with the Lord now. But she used to say, "Do your living while you're giving, so you're knowing where it's going."
There you go.
And
You're giving while you're living, so you're knowing where
you're
it's
knowing
going.
where it's going. And we were having a discussion about it's a challenge and all these things, but what if we started sharing those things while we were here? Because not only do they get the joy of receiving it, but they get to hear the story behind it.
Hmm.
And you, get to enjoy the joy of watching them receive it.
And it's one less thing that somebody has to clear out of your house when you go.
Well, my father is scaling down his footprint because he said that exact thing to me this week, and it, there's some wisdom in it. Not trying to be morbid or anything like that, but there is some wisdom in doing some of those things prior to our homegoing, so we could share in them.
Yeah, you share sharing the experiences. I mean, I think my honeymoon with my wife, when we went to Italy and Switzerland and stuff. I mean, those kind of things. Like, yeah, we've got photos and those are fun to look at, and we've got some things we bought. But man, those experiences you can't. Or with stuff with CJ right now. I mean, it's good to have a photo, but for me, it's a good reminder. Don't get so obsessed with taking the photo that you miss the moment, that you miss the actual experience of it. Because
I don't know. Living. You probably have. You go to an event, a concert, or something like that, and more people are watching the event through their video screen than the event that's actually happening in front of them.
Oh yeah,
and that's kind of an interesting thing.
On the negative side, sometimes something's happened to someone and they need help, and people are videotaping it.
Yeah,
there's a fight or something going on. It's like, go help the person.
Man, I tell you, I want to take just a second here and say good evening and welcome to all the folks over here on my watch party. Sherry, it's good to have you. Don, glad that you're here. Happy birthday to you, boss. And Christy, glad that you're here. Buddy is here. He snuck off and had a little bit of a procedure on Monday, and so he's in the recoup game. And we want to pray for Buddy and his family. His grandson was exposed, and both the grandson and the grandson's girlfriend have a fever, and so they've been tested, and so they're waiting to see. So that's Viviana. Well,
I mean, there's a fine line. I think pictures are great, but at the same point in time, like you said, there's people that they get so obsessed with the photos or the documentation process that they miss out on the actual experience. And
yeah.
And nowadays it's crazy because I don't know how many photos you have of you as a kid. I don't have very many. I mean, I've got a handful. And there's so many. I mean, we've got a photo album of CJ on Facebook, and there's like 1,000 photos in it.
Oh yeah.
So,
man, the number of me are pretty limited. So
I mean, there's a famous one of you in the cast and stuff.
Yes, but taking pictures, when I was a kid was a much different experience.
Oh yeah.
I am old enough to remember when the Polaroid hit, and you didn't know what kind of black voodoo that thing was doing. That was some crazy stuff.
So you remember when the Polaroid was new technology is what you're telling me?
Oh yeah. Yeah, not classic technology. Original new technology. Oh yeah. I mean, they cost like $1,000 a photo.
They're expensive now too. Harley's got a little camera she does hers with.
Yeah, they're not cheap for sure. So
you never knew how it was going to come out until it.
That's right. I've had several people ask me, so I'm going to take this opportunity. I've had folks reach out to me, and they're praying for and following along with Brother Bobby and his condition. And I've had several people ask me about what CRRT is. And so I'm going to play Look What I Know. So Brother Bobby, apparently, by my last report, is suffering some kidney failure. And so there's 3 types of way to do dialysis. The typical process is done in 4 hours, and it's very taxing on the body. The CRRT is a process by which it's a continual process. So over 24 hours, it does what the usual process does in 4. And so it's thorough. It's less taxing. So that's what it, and it's a it's a specialized piece of equipment that, if I understand correctly, is only offered inside ER units, as opposed to some others.
Yeah.
And there's a third method of doing dialysis, but I'm not here to do a dissertation on dialysis. But for those that have asked, that's what it is. And if the news that it was shared with me is accurate and still accurate, he would be going on that process this evening. So we just pray and trust. And
but he did get to a hospital that has that machine that has the capability to do those things.
That's correct. So that's where we are with that. So but
it's crazy, man, that they have. I mean, I know it's in a terrible time, but the fact they can even do these things. I mean, I remember. I mean, dialysis, even in my short life. I mean, I didn't know there was more than one way to do it. Yes. Now they've got all these ways to do everything.
Yes, and one of them, my friend John, he does the third type, and he does his himself at home. It's really it. One of the things I laugh about is we truly are in the sweet spot of human history when it comes to medical advances. I mean, it's incredible. And I like to crack myself up when you think about some of the things that we do today, and someone had to be the first one.
Sure.
Now, was it a matter of necessity? Well, sometimes it is. But somewhere at some time, what we take as every day was experimental.
Sure.
And, I giggle because I think of this, the conversation, when the doctor comes in and he's explaining, what he would like to do, and just think how absolutely crazy, today, like one of my family members has had heart ablations, 2 or 3 now. And that's where they go inside your heart and cauterize a muscle that's causing your heart to beat out of rhythm. Now, how would you like to bend the cat on that first conversation?
It's crazy.
But, it really is miraculous.
All these, and what isn't like penicillin? I mean, I know that's old school now, but penicillin, it was like from mold or something. Like, all these things are just crazy.
Yeah, penicillin, I'm not going to say it was an accident, but there was some fortuitiveness, and it did involve mold. So,
this is crazy.
Great. Hey, Misty, good to see you. Glad that you're here. So, there you go. There's your medical moment with, I've heard it said, I'd rather be a man that knows a little about a lot than a man who knows a lot about a little.
There you go.
There we go.
Well,
all right, music man.
You ready?
You ready? Well, let's
so.
let you do that.
Hopefully I'm in tune. I'm going to turn this mic down a little bit, but if I'm clipping, y'all just let me know. I'm having some mic thing, so you just let me know if you can't hear me or if I'm too loud or too low. You just let me know. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. Words by Isaac Watts, music by George Friedrich Handel. Handel. Or Handel, if you're from Texas. I think it's just Handel. Alright, this one's one of my favorites. We haven't played it this Christmas season, so here we go. O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. So come thou dayspring, come and cheer our spirits by thine advent here. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and death's dark shadows put to flight. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. So come, desire of nations, bind all peoples in one heart and mind. Bid envy, strife, and quarrel cease. Fill the whole world with heaven's peace. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. And rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Israel. Turn it up a little bit, as I was told to. Oh, I love Christmas carols. I love Christmas songs. I'm glad we get to do them. And if you don't like them, it's just for a little bit. So if you're Jimmy, you've been hearing me play them for like 3 months. But the rest of you, just a little bit. Did say was to certain poor shepherds in fields as they lay, in fields where they lay keeping their sheep on a cold winter's night that was so deep. Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. They looked up and saw a star shining in the east beyond them far, and to the earth it gave great light, and so it continued both day and night. praises to our heavenly Lord that hath made heaven and earth not, and with his blood mankind hath bought. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 Noel. Born is the King of Israel. Back to you, Jimmy.
Hey, hold on just a second. I see a Christmas request. It's your last opportunity. Do you honor the request?
I'll have to go get it. I can try to go print it and sing it at the end tonight. Well, I'll tell you what, we still got time. We got Christmas Eve service, but I can try to go grab it here in a second. Yeah, give me.
Well, now I don't want to hem you in for Christmas Eve, but
I can go grab it. If you hold the fort for just a second, I'll go print it off. I don't think I have it with me.
Okay, we'll hold the fort for you. Well, good evening, folks. So glad that you're here. Just again, thank you to everybody that takes time to come and join us. Vicki, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here. And Johnny, glad to have you. And there's others. So I've invited Josh when he comes back. We're going to do a little bit of a round table. Sunday, if you were with us, we shared in Christmas communion. And so we're going to talk a little bit about communion. And I'd like to ask you, if you were with us Sunday on the digital side and you took communion, I'd love to hear how it went for you. Did you enjoy it? Was it meaningful to you? Also, if you were on campus in person, I'd love to hear your thoughts about the communion service. It was strikingly different, but I believe we made the very best of the circumstances. And while Josh is getting the song, I guess I'll remind you guys when we're talking about services and things, there has been posted on our website, our Facebook pages, and in our email, our holiday schedule. And we're adjusting it just a little. We believe that it's a COVID-wise choice. And so please be sure that you check the schedule to make sure where we are, what we're doing, and when we're doing it. And so we'll make sure we do that. So, but anybody here share anything about their communion service experience here on campus? And so I love communion. I mentioned that Sunday. And what's really interesting, I don't know if it's the right word, for me is I always seem to teach a little long when it comes to communion service, because you're always going to need time to actually take communion. But it seems to be my habit. I want to teach on communion because I want to encourage the believer and the non-believer not to walk quickly by this event, because like I said, my life experience as a young man, I remember it well. I see people go through religious activities, and there doesn't seem to be any heart. There doesn't seem to be any deep consideration or meditation on the event. And I just feel a real burden to try and help people to slow down, to contemplate, and to walk slowly around it. And so Sunday we talked about two things. One is we talked about the difference between a sacrament and an ordinance, and they are different in practice. Let me back up. They're similar in practice, but they're different and believed process. And as an evangelical, we hold to the symbolic meaning of communion. There's not any special powers or special grace or dispensation through the act of taking communion or the elements that are shared in communion. We don't hold to that. So we talked a little bit about that because you might be going out to visit this year for Christmas, and if you're at a church that takes sacraments, now you'll know what that is, and you'll feel better prepared. So I see Josh is back at the music station. So what say ye, Josh? Shall you sing it?
Sorry, I was trying to find the right key for a holy night.
Is it this one?
I think I'm going to do it in B flat. So I missed whatever you're saying because I was just working on that.
Oh, that's all right. I was just talking about you.
Oh, no. Say good things, I hope.
Well, I'm not given to lying.
You always know how much someone likes someone else by how much crap they talk about them when they're.
That's right.
Two ways. It's either in jest or not, but it's always funny when you're at. Somebody ran into us at lunch and said,
Yep.
"Hey, you're with him. You're with him." It's always funny.
You ready?
Yeah. I mean, we'll give it a go.
Okay. There you go.
All right. 1 second.
Tanya, don't say we never gave you anything.
Yeah. This is not practice. So, if it's not any good, then there's also B minors and F sharps in it. But oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth. And long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. In the thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees, and oh, hear the angel voices, and oh, night divine, and oh, night when Christ was born, and oh, night, the holy night, oh, night divine. Whoops, sorry about that. Truly he taught us to love one another. His law is love, and his gospel is peace. Chain shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease. Sweet hymns of joy in grateful chorus raise, we let all within us praise his holy name. Christ is the Lord, and oh, praise his name forever. His power and glory evermore proclaim. His power and glory evermore proclaim. There you go. That's without any practice, so not terrible.
I was waiting for the applause to die down. Good sir, good sir. That's awesome.
That's a tough song to come right out to. It's a good one. That is a good one. So we made it work.
Well, Viviana likes it, so
Tanya likes it. So there you
go. And Miss Tanya, so
there you go.
Good on you, sir. So I basically was kind of referencing back to our communion service, and I always feel like I overteach a little because I communion means so much to me, and I feel like I need to be slowed down and kind of stop here, right this now, because we can find ourselves going through things very quickly and important things, and they just don't do what it's designed to do. You know, if we held to the sacraments position on the Lord's Supper, then you just got to show up, take in, and you're good. But as a commemorative, our communion service is a commemorative effort.
Right.
Now, what's interesting to me is behind you, just over your left shoulder, Josh, I see a round photograph of your son.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, is that not him?
That's Harley.
Oh, okay.
It's hard to see from all the way back there. Yep.
Okay, of your daughter. Well, that is a commemorative photograph.
Yep.
Because
she made the ornament.
Oh, I hope she took a not so great CD.
It said the best sermons of Jimmy Vaughn. Oh man. Oh whoops.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of those. There's a lot of those in that plastic box in there, but that's a commemorative item, and when you look at that photograph, especially years down the road, it'll take you back not only to that photo, but it'll take you back to the events around that photo.
Right.
And communion is so important that we slow down and take in the commemorative attitude and action of everything that was around the communion, where it came from, why we do it, and those sort of things. And so I hate this. Sometimes I feel like I've got to jerk the emergency brake and kind of just slow everyone's bus down. So,
well, and I think it's in Utah, you've done communion. You've taught about communion so well. I mean, I remember one time you were going through it, and you always bring out different elements. But the one time you were going through it, and you were talking about the kind of connecting it back to the Old Testament and talking about like the manna and the quail and the water that God provided for them and how they did that. And you've talked about the Passover lamb before, the Passover and communion, how that's tied together, and all these other kind of elements. And I mean, I think if there's any place to kind of pull the e-brake and slow down, I think communion is definitely one of them, especially, and that's one of the reasons I like that we do it. I would, infrequently is the wrong word, we plan to do it about once a quarter, and I think that kind of raises the I don't know, even if it might necessarily shouldn't, but it raises it for me. It makes it kind of more of an appointment thing. And I don't know if you grew up in a place that did it more frequently, but I know people who have done it like every week, and it can get just kind of mundane and familiar if you do it all the time.
It's human nature, and I'm not saying everyone does it. I'm just saying it takes a conscious effort to not become. My church experience growing up, it was once a month, and so the communion is there to kind of emergency brake us to stop and not just do the process, but to think about why we have the process and how we have the process and for whom the process is made available. It's really a three-legged stool, and if we're not careful, whether we take it once a month or every Sunday or once a quarter, it just becomes something that we do, and it's something that's self-centered. And so it's really important that we remember, for us to celebrate communion, God stepped out of glory and stepped into humanity.
Right.
That's what the reason for the season, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That God would incarnate himself in such a way, in such a humble way, and then not only to do that, but to follow a 33-year process, plan to deliver us to deliver a doorway by which we can be delivered. And it's just, and I think about it, and I think about the fact that he didn't have to do it.
Right.
See, that's the thing, is if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves thinking, well, God is a God of love. That's what the Bible says. But his love did not demand this step. It was his grace and love and compassion and these things. And so, it's really a contemplative thing. I think you could probably, if done right, I think you could do an entire hour just taking communion easily.
Sure.
That's one of the things, we talked about the sacrament versus the symbolic. Some of the sacrament churches, the high church, some of them really take their time at it. And I think there's some benefit to that.
Yeah, we sometimes lose, or we can lose the reverence. When you kind of bring it down to the symbol or those kind of things, it's like we got to find a way to keep the reverence, because you've talked about before, there's it says in the Bible, Paul tells church, hey, some of you are sick because you're taking this communion in an unworthy manner. And obviously that's talking about kind of the way they're living their lives in real life, and then how they're acting in church, pretending a certain way and being hypocrites and all those kind of things. But yeah, I always take it very seriously when I do communion. Obviously I couldn't be there this Sunday, but whenever I take it, to really, you give us that moment to be, okay, is there anybody you need to go forgive? Is there anybody you need to ask forgiveness for? Any sins you need to repent from? Because it is a serious thing. There's a reason it's given, and it shouldn't just be, yes, it's not the sacrament and the way that we don't believe it's a sacrament the way the Catholics and those kind of people believe, but it's still, it's communion and baptism. Those are our two, what we hold to, and those have to be important.
Yes. And, when I was growing up, and I'm trying to think back to when I first heard someone teach the whole council on communion.
Right.
We know the upper room, we know the washing of the feet, we know those. But then when you look at, Paul warns us, and for an unbeliever, think about this. For an unbeliever to participate in communion, they're lying.
Oh, yeah.
They're liars, because the communion says, this is what I believe, and this is what I have received. And if a non-believer takes it unknowingly, well, it's still, but if a non-believer takes it knowingly, it's a false testimony.
When Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me, you can't do it in remembrance of someone you don't know, someone you don't believe in.
No. It's just, and boy, that just kind of sinks in on you, because I think back, like I said, when I was young, I took communion every month, and I wasn't saved.
Right.
I even faked being saved at one time, but I wasn't truly saved.
Mm-hmm.
I was taking the Lord's communion in an unworthy manner. And is ignorance bliss? Well, but it was never taught to me. It was never explained to me. No one ever said, hey, this isn't for you yet.
Right.
And
It was
you
just
know,
like, this is something good. You should do it. You're in this church, so you must be a Christian. So take this communion, kind of
yeah,
thing.
we're just all doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Let's all do this. And I think the importance of communion also to just kind of stop us down is, do the things of the Lord still stir our hearts?
Right.
The unfortunate truth is we really can become too familiar
Hmm.
and too casual with grace. And when you really will allow yourself to stop, and we go back to the upper room. I think it's a great place always to go back to. And
You've
you
been
look,
there.
yeah, and took communion there.
Yeah.
Um, when you look and Jesus offers that sop to Judas, there's different people, different places, but I believe that Judas still had the opportunity.
Right.
I believe one last time, and I think in my mind what that eye contact must have been like. I mean, it's almost palpable as I just think about it, because Judas knew.
They both knew, and they both knew that the other one knew.
That's right. Everyone knew the cards. And the fact that Christ's death and resurrection is just as valid for him as it is for me. And we look at Judas and we all this, but I'm a sinner.
Yeah.
And I don't go out and get bags of silver, but there's unfortunately times in my life where my sinfulness is willed, not unintentional. And that, sin is sin.
I think Rembrandt did a marvelous painting of the crucifixion of Christ, and if you look at it, there's somebody at the bottom kind of nailing Jesus' feet, and I believe it's been a while since I've seen the painting, but he's doing something, and it's actually Rembrandt painted himself in the scene as one of the people crucifying Jesus. And I thought, that always kind of gets me, because if you think about it, we've all rebelled against God, we've all done the Judas thing, just not physically necessarily, but we've all been there. We're all sinners, like he said.
Staring into the eyes of God. It's really, if you allow yourself to really walk down into that rabbit hole, it is and to know that in a thought, Christ could have wiped it all away. God has the power, the ability to speak into fiat existence, that which used to not exist. Well, that same God could speak it away.
Sure.
And he does it. I mean,
Jesus could get off that cross anytime he wanted to.
It calls us, to commemorate what Christ has done, and it calls us to contemplate where we are with him. Am I really walking with the Lord? And I think that gets so convoluted sometimes inside the church. Walking with the Lord isn't just showing it up at the church house every now and then.
Right.
Walking with the Lord isn't just cutting a check every now and then.
Yeah.
Walking with the Lord in the biblical sense means that you strive to live all facets of your life with Christ foremost. Mm-hmm. We don't bat 1,000. We all know that. But all of us, including this guy, if we're not careful, Christ kind of starts sliding over or sliding back, and we start living in our own power.
Yeah.
We start, trying to do things in our own power. I don't know if anyone else would admit it, but there's been more than one time in my life I psychologically said, "Hey, God, I got this."
Oh yeah.
You go save the hungry. I got this. Mm-hmm. That usually doesn't turn out very well.
I mean, there's been plenty of times where I've gone through something and I've there's whatever, and I'm trying to control it, I'm trying to fix it, and then I get to the point I'm like, I haven't even prayed about this. Like, I haven't even once prayed about this thing. And that's, I mean, it's just, it's crazy, because when you think that, you may have been there too, and you go, how can I, you know, well, how am I so weak that I'm so quick to forget? I'm so quick to be distracted by everything. I mean, you look at Christmas. I mean, how easy is it to get caught up in, especially this year, what you can do, what you can't do? You know, is there money for presents? Is there all this other thing? And, you know, instead just embrace the simple joy of what it really represents. And it doesn't really matter. You know, we don't have to get into the story, but you share a story with me, you know, as we were driving today about a woman who was talking about, you know, maybe her last, and it's like, what about that perspective, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, we use a phrase, and I used it Sunday, is your heart right?
Right.
So let me ask you, when you hear that phrase, what does that mean to you? What picture does that bring to mind?
Is your heart right? Well, when we're talking about Christmas, it immediately makes me think of the Grinch and getting his heart growing through. But I mean, really, it's like, is your motivation, is your attitude, your motivation, your desire, you know, is that all, are you doing it for the right reasons, you know?
Right. I think part of it too is, what are we carrying in our hearts?
Sure.
I don't think you can say as a believer, my heart is right with the Lord, if there's bitterness in our heart, if there's anguish in our heart. Good evening, David. It's good to see you. And I got someone else back here I wanted to say hello to. Hello, Miss Randy. It's good to see you. Thank you for being here. But I think so often we think we can carry the poison of the world in the sanctified vessel of the heart and be right. And that's just not true. One, you know, the Bible tells us that if we serve two masters, we'll love one and we'll hate the other. And I think a lot of times I don't think most people do it wantingly, can carry bitterness or anger or those types of things. You know, we live in a very contentious time in our country. And if we're not careful, even as believers, we can find ourselves carrying feelings, emotions, thoughts that are not godly and should be rectified, you know. And it's a continual thing, right? It's a continual thing.
Yeah, because bitterness is one of those things where not only is, you know, the classic, you know, bitterness is like drinking poison and thinking it'll hurt somebody else, but also it's, unless it's checked, it just grows. It's not a stagnant thing. Like bitterness is something, it's a cancer. It's something that once it's in you, if you don't deal with it, it just spreads and spreads and spreads. And you and I both know people who, you know, there's a seed of bitterness that entered into their heart 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they let it grow, and now it's all through them.
Yes.
It's spread to their entire being.
Sin, bitterness in your heart is kind of like water on any surface. If you give it long enough, it's going to find the weak spot. It's going to fill the weak spot. And, you know, you look at the Grand Canyon.
Sure.
How did that get there? Well, it didn't get there overnight.
Right.
It was a slow, steady persistence, because the water's going to find where it can go. And it, you know, and it
wear it down.
Will do that. I mean, it soaks into you, and then, you know, I've said it before. You know, the way that we feel can affect the way that we think, or vice versa. The way we think affects the way we feel. The way we feel affects the way that we live. And it is a sad thing when a true born again child of the King finds themselves lost in a sea of bitterness, because it is the antithesis of Christ-likeness.
Right.
I mean, if you are a bitter, resentful, unforgiving individual, you cannot be less Christ-like as a believer. And
That's eventually, I mean, really what got Judas, right? He was bitter that Jesus wasn't who he thought he was going to be. He was bitter that he didn't do what he wanted him to do. And that bitterness grew to the point that not only did he betray Jesus, he killed himself.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about somebody who was called by Jesus as an apostle, followed him, saw the miracles, had to let a seed of bitterness in his heart, let water wore it out, and look where he ended up.
And, I mean, 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it was quick. He didn't have 6 decades. It was a very quick walk. Mm-hmm. And we talked about identification. I think sometimes as believers, we take our identifiers maybe a little too lightly. Whether it's the shirts that we wear, the hats that we wear, when we identify with Christ, which that's what communion is, then we're saying not only do we believe, but we're saying that that's our belief.
Right.
And we need to be reminded of that, because the world, they don't, they need to match up. And it would be very interesting if you held a communion service in a gymnasium in which you invited the community to come and watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. You're going to have a church communion. And so your believers come, but while you're taking that communion, your community sitting in the bleachers around you. Mm-hmm. And, what would they think? I mean, does it match up? I mean, think about it. Sometimes I think about that because, we come to our local gatherings, here in our campus, and, and we know each other, and, we're safe and these things. And, I mean, I want to believe and, assume, people are what they're projecting themselves to be. Yeah. But if you were out where the community could sit in and watch, what would it be? What if we could bring L3 in?
Yeah. all your coworkers, all your friends,
and have our L3 family taking communion. What would that? What do you mean?
And if all that's not enough, to cause you to pause, I think about the Christians. You look through Christian history, you got to think about the saints that came before us, who many of whom actually literally died.
Yeah.
For so that they could baptize and have the Lord's Supper the way that it says in the Bible. I mean, that we've got a history of people who, just so you could have the Bible in your own language, so you could have communion, so you could have baptism. I mean, we have Christian brothers and sisters who literally gave their lives for that. We if nothing else, for all the other reasons too, but we owe it to them to give it a pause and take it seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the declaration. What does communion declare? We've talked about what it declares to us, but what does it declare about us? We're saying we believe. It's not just the historical Jesus. It's not just the theoretics of theology. We believe that Christ was bodily born, sinless life. We believe all of that. Physically resurrected and returning.
Right.
That's what we're saying.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. And, when you stop and you think, this is what I believe. I mean, we're living in it, and one day we'll die in it if the Lord tarries. Is that what we believe? Is that what we're staking not only today on, but all of them, Right. And then, the expectation, not only do we believe, but there's more than this. Communion, as we understand it, has an expiration date.
Right.
I've gotten now, when I was in India, I picked up for my mother. Well, I'll show you. My mother's favorite animal was elephants. And while I was in India, I picked her up this elephant. And this elephant and all the inlay in it, oh, there we go, all that. So all of this was used in the building of the Taj.
Oh, wow.
So everything you see here are elements that are used in the Taj, right? And so when I gave it to my mother, I shared with her, and she loved it. And then when she went home, I asked if I could please have it for a keepsake, and it stays on my desk. But now, when we have family gatherings of certain types, especially, I take this with me. Like for my birthday this year, we had a small dinner together, and I take this and I set it on the table because it reminds me. But even this has a expiration date.
Right.
One day heaven.
Amen.
Until that day, this is a physical, touchable reminder. And you and I were talking about it. It's the memory.
Right.
It's the memory of walking through the Taj and thinking, man, I wish I could share this with everyone.
Yeah.
And then fighting your way through everyone trying to sell you everything.
Yeah.
I remember it like it was yesterday, and I'm like a kid because there's a cajillion things you can buy, but I wanted something that really spoke, and I won't tell you what this costs, but this was this was not the buy one get one free item, but it has that for me, and what's even beautiful, we talked about not only is it a commemorative thing and a reflective thing, but it's a teaching thing. Mm-hmm. And so when my granddaughter comes, my office gets a very special visit from time to time, and she loves elephants. And so she comes in and she collects all the elephants in my office, of which there's several. And she knows this is the G elephant.
Yeah.
And so one of these days, I'm going to get to teach her. And that's what communion is too. It's our way of teaching young believers, unbelievers, maturing believers, this is what we believe. This is why we believe it. And this is what you should believe,
And when we all do that as Christians, with communion, it's all a preview for that one glorious feast that we'll all participate in heaven. And all of these communions like you're talking about, it's all previews of that. One day we'll have that.
I can't even wrap my brain around what that experience will be like, because it's so far outside the realm of what we understand.
Right.
But yes, one day our faith will be sight, and that's what communion is. Sometimes it's like wiping the sleep out of our eyes, because sometimes life's so polluted and we get distracted, and so we come to communion and we kind of clear our eyes a little bit.
That's good.
And
that's what CJ does every time he wakes up. He does.
Yeah, you got to rub those eyes, man, and get that junk out of there. And it's a beautiful thing, and the Lord really knew what He was doing, because it's simple. I mean, my goodness, it's a piece of bread and a sip of juice. I mean, it's as simple, but it is profound and deeply meaningful if we take the time to pause and allow ourselves to be there. The power of it really is left up to us.
Amen.
So, all right. Well, thoughts, cries of outrage, fits of anger.
I love it. And I love that we do it so close to Christmas, because I think Christmas is a natural slowdown time anyway. So it all kind of blends together. So it's great. I love it.
I don't know how many evangelical churches do communion at Christmas. Now, our Catholic friends and some of the others, they typically will. And, I know our friends over at Wesley Methodist will typically, they serve it at candlelight service, if I remember correct. But when I had the opportunity, to come here to ALF, it was something that I really wanted us to do, because Easter and Christmas, they're the bookends of our hope. And, and I remember I had a conversation with one individual who's long since not with the church, accusing me of bringing the church down at Christmas. And I said, well, brother, I don't see communion and the crucifixion and resurrection of Christ as a bring down.
I mean, maybe for Satan.
Yeah,
it's kind of the glorious part of the whole thing.
Well, I mean, it's the reason, right?
Yeah.
If you can't have Easter without Christmas, and Christmas is just there's not an Easter, it's a tandem. And so I remember that conversation. It was really hard for me not to hurt that dude's feelings.
Yeah, so I guess Easter is just a real beatdown for him.
Well, no, it belongs at Easter.
Oh, I see.
We're talking about the crucifixion, but at Christmas we don't talk about the crucifixion.
We just get little baby Jesus at Christmas.
Yeah, we're just at baby Jesus.
Gotcha.
We're not at crucifixion Jesus. So, but I love it, and I'm so grateful that our church chooses to do this, and I'm really grateful. We really try to do our best. For those who may be with us, some churches will do it on Christmas at their Christmas service.
Sure.
And the reason that we don't is because that, like, Sunday will be the pre-Christmas service, and so there are a lot of people who will come to that service, whether they're with family or tradition or whatever, and that's wonderful. I want them here, but I don't want to put them in a place intentionally of uncomfortableness.
Sure.
I don't want to paint someone into a corner by which, they may do something that they really shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason we always choose the Sunday early. And it's like Easter. We don't take communion on Easter. Why? Because, again, that is traditionally a large attendance time, and communion is for the believers,
right?
Not for the seekers, the curious, the biannual pilgrims. And so we really try to do our very best to be mindful and loving for our friends and our guests, and to try to guard it and hold it into a high regard. So if you've ever wondered why we do it that way, well, that's it. Now, in 20 years, when I'm not pastor anymore, Jeff may decide to do something different. I don't know. But that's the goal. There's a real goal to it, and I'm thankful for the way we handle that particular part of our corporate worship. So, well, sir, this is the last Wednesday night of the year. So
this is, it's not technically the last Wednesday night of the year, but it's the last Wednesday night that we're going to be here.
Yeah, that's right. No, this isn't the end of the world Wednesday night. But we will be back on Wednesday night, the first Wednesday night of January. So there'll be a little bit of a break, So, but you guys, like I said, please be sure to check the schedule for the balance of the holiday season. Also, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, and those of you who are on our email list, you just received it. Everything in life has been changed with COVID. And so this year, with the business meeting, we have done something different and unique. And we believe it's a good thing. And so we're going to invite you to go to our church website. You'll find a brand new page there that won't be there forever. And it says Note 2020 Business Meeting Notes. And if you'll go there, we've created a video for you to share some news and ask you to consider some things. And so it's going to be different. It's going to be unique, and we hope that it's effective. But please, we encourage you to take some time, go see it. It's well done. The men who are on it are marginally attractive, but it was a lot of fun, and we were able to record it prior to Jeff's departing for Florida, and give you the information that we refer. And always, 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 if you ever have a question, concern, or suggestion, just talk to us.
Yeah,
in whatever channel is most comfortable to you. But please, do not ever not ask your question. We're family, and our desire is to be as transparent as really clean glass, like we have here at the church right now. So we look forward to you spending a little bit of time with that, and our moving forward in the new year.
Yeah,
well, sir, I think
great news and information. It's less than 45 minutes. It's not a thing. Just it's got everything all compact in there. Yeah. And we have it for you the closed November giving records, and the Lord's just been good. And Amen.
Let me say, to all of you, thank you for your faithful giving, not only of your time, but of your treasures and your talents. The Lord has been good to us. He has provided for the ministries of ALF, and He provides through His people, and that's you. And let's just bring it all the way down to the bottom, shall we, Josh? We're really glad that we have salaries.
Amen. That way I can pay for the electricity to light this tree.
Yeah. We thank you very much. I know I speak for Josh. It is a privilege to be full-time committed to the ministry of ALF. Not everyone gets the privilege, and it is our desire to never grow too comfortable, and because we're able to give our full days because you faithfully give, and we appreciate that. Josh, I'll let you say something there if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I just want to agree, on that, and it means so much to me to be able to do this, and obviously, pay all the bills and those kinds of things. But I mean, at the end of the day, I think the encouragement thing that Jimmy mentioned it is just how faithful God is, and that we talked about it before. God does miracles, God gives visions. I preached this in my last sermon, but generally God chooses to bless us by using us to bless others. And so, when you're a part of that in this time of year, we need to be thinking about those people who need our prayers, need a little help. And we've, many of you helped us in our recent little bout with CJ, and we appreciate that. And we try to pay that forward. I don't know if you saw it, Jimmy. I think you posted it. There was that 900 car Starbucks or Dairy Queen or whatever line.
Oh, it was thing. Dairy Queen.
But yeah, this is a time of year for it. It's a great time to pause and think about that, and hug the people you love, and if God's giving you a little extra, make sure to share it with somebody who has a little less.
No greater words have been spoken. It's with that we will wish you a very Merry Christmas. We hope to see you Sunday, and again, we hope that you'll take time to go by and visit the business meeting information. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll see you soon.